Welcome to Opinion Journal. I'm Mary Kissel. Pope Francis released an important apostolic exhortation in these last days, and it's receiving a lot of attention because of the comments the pontiff made about capitalism. Acton Institute Research Director Samuel Gregg, also the author of Becoming Europe and Tea Party Catholic, joins me now. Samuel, the Pope wrote, and I quote, "We can no longer trust in the unseen forces in the invisible hand of the market." Is the Pope anti-capitalist?
I don't think the Pope is anti-capitalist. I also don't think he's particularly pro-capitalist. He's concerned about poverty in the world, which is not surprising given that he comes from Latin America and more specifically from Argentina, which, as you know, has been an economic disaster for many years now. So he's focusing upon this issue of poverty, but when it comes to understanding the market, he clearly doesn't really think that this is the way forward. And he also makes some other statements in this document about markets in general. He talks about the absolute autonomy of markets. He talks about a type of invisible tyranny that's exerted by things like finance. And myself and others have been relatively critical of some of these statements because we would argue, for example, that there is no such thing as an absolutely autonomous market. It doesn't exist. Another problem, of course, is that those of us who favor free markets aren't arguing for an absolute autonomy of markets. We believe in markets, but the markets, of course, have to exist within a certain institutional framework. They have rule of law, strong property rights, and above all, a certain type of moral culture. So I think that one of the reasons these remarks aroused such controversy was because it's I don't think particularly accurate in terms of its depiction of market forces, but also what those people who are in favor of markets are actually arguing for. Also, there are comments about...
Is it possible that the Pope is being misconstrued here, and actually his comments are more about excessive consumerism, too much of a focus on material things and not enough focus on matters of the spirit?
Well, of course, he has talked about consumerism and excessive materialism, as has pretty much every pope going back to St. Peter. But his comments, while he says those things, he does make some comments about things like whether growth will get people out of poverty. And he seems relatively skeptical of that, despite all the evidence that suggests that growth does indeed get people out of poverty. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest this. So the comments about consumerism and materialism are very well taken, especially here in the West. But to somehow think that that translates into markets themselves being the cause of these problems, well, that's a more questionable claim.
Samuel, about 30 seconds left. What are the likely consequences for the Church of this document, of those views?
Well, I think it confirms in many people's minds that the Church doesn't take economics seriously. It will confirm in many Catholics' minds that the idea of business is somehow not taken as seriously as it should be, despite the fact that the Pope says that business is a noble vocation. And also this focus upon things that are about distribution and forgetting that wealth creation has to precede wealth distribution. So I think these are some of the problems that will weaken the Church's credibility if it's not careful when it's commenting on economic questions.
Acton Institute Research Director Samuel Gregg, thanks for joining us on Opinion Journal.
Thank you, Mary.